All right, testing one, two, three. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
All right. Okay, guys, welcome to your practical class. All right, it's the beginning of another week. Um, we are gonna um we're gonna move into continuing our project for today, but we do have a class activity. Um, the last time we had to put it off. So by now everybody should have their Revit ready. Am I right? Everybody should have their Revits ready, right? So okay, let us take a look on where we are in our schedule. All right. Oops, this is the wrong module. You guys have long past digital design media. All right. So let's see where we're at now. Currently, today is what? Today is the 30th. So currently we are here. We are at the beginning of checkpoint 3, which is to work on building stud framing walls and openings, right? So that is what we're going to look on today. And we are going to do that inside of a class activity. Now, I want to just remind you guys, right? Some aspects of what we do in the module are going to be counted towards your class activity. So remember, I said this on Saturday, right? There are some aspects of the course that we're going to do in class, and there are others that we're going to do outside of class. And depending on your submission timestamp, that will determine whether or not if they are added to your class participation, right? So today we're going to take a look at we're going to talk a little bit about LODs, which is level of detail in Revit. And we're also going to start the process of creating our walls. All right, guys. So I want you guys to get out your Revit so that we can do this class activity. I will put a link on the website. So all you do, you just look for the let me see. I'll just stick it somewhere here and put it as class activity so you guys can submit it. Since it's this class activity will not be a part of your model directly. Now, we're going to have about 3 weeks to deal with checkpoint 3. So this week we're going to do stud framing. And next week we're going to do the roof and floor slabs. And the following week we're going to do stairs and railing. Right? So that is how we're going to divide it up. Then you're going to actually have Heroes Day on one of the classes. So we're not doing anything on that day. But then the week after is when the checkpoint is due. We're no, not the week after. Then we're going to work on custom objects in Revit. We're going to look at the family editor. And then we are going to put, right, here we go. Then we're going to merge the building and the terrain together. You're going to submit those two. So pretty much this checkpoint, as you can see, it is the longest checkpoint. As you can see here, that's the checkpoint there. So that is the longest checkpoint. All right. So let's get going. All right, before we start, all right, guys, you need to level with me. How many persons have already submitted their foundations? Show by the thumbs up emoji. Surely not just one person. Surely, surely, surely. Nobody else? Who else has submitted the foundation? Guys, remember, right? And I need to seriously remind you, remember, it is a percentage a day, right? So you need to submit these checkpoints, especially checkpoint 3. All right, guys. Because any day after the due date that you see on this timeline, it's going to be -1% a day. So I need you guys to catch up with me in the practicals, okay? Are you hearing me, guys? Are you here? Are we awake?
Yes, sir, we're here.
Yes,
All
sir,
right.
hearing you.
Right. So I need you guys to sorry. I need you guys to catch up with me in the on the checkpoints. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to move ahead with this class activity. And what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to do some additional. I think I posted 2 videos online that that you can use. And I'm going to do another one for the walls. All right. So let's fire up Revit. All right, now remember on the class whiteboard, why does this look so funny? Yes, the window is a little big. I think that's a bit better. On the class whiteboard, guys, remember I have also posted some construction guidance that you guys can use when you are creating your floorboards, right? And there's a video that kind of explains how I went about it. So this can help you guys to get through. Now, what we're going to look on today is going to be creating these walls here. All right, so I have up Revit, and I'm going to paste this slide on the mirror board. I'm going to paste it maybe somewhere right here. And it speaks about level of detail. And this is something, guys, that is super important. I'm trying to allow you to not make some of the mistakes that a lot of people make, even that I made when I was in school. Granted, I didn't use BIM, but it's the same concept of knowing how to manage your level of detail, right? And let me tell you guys, when you go nowadays, most firms are trying to make the transition to BIM. And you guys are the ones that are going to go out there and help them to make this transition. So, part of the challenge of BIM is that because we know that it's 3D, a lot of person tend to focus on the 3D aspect of it. But BIM is actually a intuitive combination of different levels of details in your drawing. So there are some details, there are some aspects of your drawing that you're going to represent as a symbol, and there's some that you're going to represent at its highest quality. Now, you actually choose that while you're creating your drawings. And how there's no rule book that says, okay, if I'm drawing this 5-story building, I'm only going to draw it in the highest level of quality. Or there's no rule book that says everything has to be drawn as 2D either. You have to determine this while you are creating the model. Now, in our case, in 3DM, we have stipulated how we want to go about doing this. So, for example, when you look on the project, it tells us, what tools we must use for the windows, and it tells us that we must use the terrain to build the terrain. When we did the tutorial, we went about using columns and beams to build the base, but you didn't have to. Like, if you weren't given these specific set of instructions, you could determine that, okay, I'm going to draw my elevation as 2D, but I'm going to do my rendering as 3D. Or I'm going to do my floor plans as 2D, but I'm going to do my interior elevations as 3D. So you can actually choose what level of detail you want to produce for every aspect of your drawing, right? So let's go back here. And this is what we want to talk about a little today, right?
Sir,
Yes, go ahead.
the background music is a little too loud.
Oh, I need to
Yeah.
turn it down. Yes, okay. All right, let's PDM. Let's see. All right. So we are on checkpoint 3.
Okay, so
All right. All right, guys, just give this a while, this video a little while, this file a little while to download. Now, the good thing about this is that I'm also building my model along with your model. So the idea was is that if I'm giving you guys the assignment, I should be able to do it myself too as well. Don't it? It's only fair. Can't give you something that I can do, right?
Yes, sir. True.
Okay. Um, all right. So let me open while I wait for my file here to open. I'm going to show you this other thing here. Export. Hopefully this doesn't take that long. All right, so let's open this up and let me try and find. Oh, no, no. And um, hmm. Oh, my bad. My bad. I was opening families. We're actually going to look on families, but a little later. And a family file is different from a is different than a Revit file. So uh, let me just find my model. Ta-da. Right. And here we go. Right. So I'm at wall. So I've done the site and I've done the walls as well. All right. So by the way, if you're using the new Revit 24 that has the dark mode, you can go over to view and then go over to canvas to change it back to white. All right. Okay, so this is where I am with my model. So we have the site, then we did the foundation, and I did the video. I sent the video to you guys of while I was creating this foundation, and then also the walls. Now the great thing about the walls, I'm gonna switch it to orthographic here. Now, the great thing about the walls is that we are going to actually do, let's use a section box here. The screen is so small. There we go. All right. Am I clicking on? Oh, yeah. There we go. Section box. All right. A little more. Right. So we're going to be doing the wall where we have all the members for the stud wall in. So when we're going to do a perspective section as one of our deliverables, and then we're going to do an exploded view. So when you guys do that exploded view, you are supposed to, I'm going to try and just gauge it right there. Right there. A little more. There we go. So we're supposed to show these internal members that's here. And this is what I want to talk about a little bit because there are different ways that we could go about showing this. And this level of detail that you see here is probably somewhere about here, this level of detail. And see, I have another example here. So for example, you either want to show a symbol or you want to show a bounding box. So for example, if I use the bounding box method for the wall, then it wouldn't show all of these elements inside. But here's the thing to consider, guys. If you are not going to use it in your drawing, then you don't need to go through the trouble of creating it. You can use another method. On the flip side, if you plan to, for example, generate a more like photorealistic output for your drawing, then you're going to want to go to the other end of the scale. Now, for our purposes in computing, this is pretty much the level that we want for most of what we produce. This is a kind of a mid-ground. And has anybody here ever used SketchUp Warehouse? Anybody ever got any models from SketchUp Warehouse? I'm sure
Yes,
everybody
sir.
here. And I remember in our presentation, somebody had mentioned that, oh, I can spot a SketchUp model from a mile away. And
Right.
usually SketchUp models are around this detail. So most of the times, the kind of models that you put on your floor plan in a BIM environment is not necessarily going to be of this level of detail. It's going to be somewhere here. And guess what? Some of them will even be down to this level. Now, these in-between ones, normally, for example, if you're doing maybe like a schematic design, so you're trying to design a space, then you would use this one, right? And maybe if you're trying to set up zones, like, okay, here we're going to have the living and the dining, then maybe we'll use boxes to kind of, which is kind of like a bubble diagram where you use a shape to determine where certain things are. So now everything in a BIM environment requires you to always have this in mind, right? And that is what we're going to do these walls here. All right. All right. It's going to be great, guys. We also, in my model, I've chose to have, remember, I'm trying to do my model as complex as possible. So that way, no matter the level of complexity that you guys are doing, you should be able to match what I'm doing in my model. All right. All right. Okay. Okay, doke. We're gonna go over to a 3D view, right? So we're gonna look at this 3D pretty much now. And what we're going to do is I want you guys to just have a blank Revit. This process should take you about an hour. But it's important for you to know this because we're going to use it in our model. This is how we're going to create the walls. In your design studio, though, maybe in your design studio, you are going to determine what level of detail you want for your model that you're using for your housing project. Is it going to be something as simple as a symbol? Or is it going to be something that is going to be really that have a high fidelity? So when you guys create this, I want you to submit this Revit file. I'll give you a link on the site to submit it. This is an in-class activity, guys. This is not a homework because we're going to have pretty much 3 weeks plus a holiday. So that's 4 to work on our buildings. And by the time you guys come back next class, everyone should have their walls. Guys, I'm feeling very concerned um about how far we are with this major project. So I just want to highlight that fact. Right? I need everybody to be on the same page so we can keep on schedule. All right. So let's learn about level of detail.
Blank project.
Let's turn this down.
Now, before we do our examples, I want to show you this slide that we have here. And in this slide, we're talking about the BIM level of detail, right? So LOD means level of detail. And whenever we're creating any object using building information modeling or any form of modeling, there are different levels of detail that we use depending on the type of drawing that we are creating. So in our example that we have here, if we take a look on this chair that we have here, we have different ways of representing this chair model, starting from a 2D symbol. So for example, if you're showing a floor plan, a 2D symbol is fine. In some cases, depending on the type of plan, a bounding box is fine. And
right. Okay, guys. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look on our wall. So I hope you guys have Revit open.
All using different levels of detail. So we're going to try it out in this level. Then we are going to also try it out in the 2D, in the bounding box, actually, not the 2D. Right. So, and then we're going to actually try it in the highest level of fidelity. And we're going to build a wall sample using these 3 methods to see what does it take to build it in these 3 methods. Because the other factor that we have to consider here is time, right? So in some cases, it might be worth to build something at a high quality based on the time, or maybe based on what you expect to get from that model. So for example, this chair, we need to render it, so we're going to build it at the highest quality. Maybe for this quality, we're going to cut a section through it, so we need to show the shape of the chair, right? So we're going to kind of investigate how to get this type of modeling and this kind of workflow, how to think about going about this. Okay, so we're going to have this model be here. We're going to put it over to the side. And our objective is that we want to create this wall that's here, right? So we're going to investigate how it is that we can do that. So we're going to put this Revit over here, and we're not going to use the project tab just yet. So we are going to stick that down here and make that smaller for now. Okay, so we have this, I'm in the 3D space for this project. Now, obviously this is a wall. So, and there is a wall tool in Revit, but what we want to do is, remember, there are different levels of detail. So what would it take if we want to model the highest fidelity of this stud wall? Meaning we want to show all the stud elements, all the connections, all the angle plates. How would we get that done? Well, we definitely could not use the wall tool because the wall tool doesn't allow for that. We would have to actually model the elements. Now, if we want to model something in Revit, and we're only going to do just a short sample of this wall. So we are going to use what is called the component tool. So if we head over to the component tool, and this might look a little different for you, if I make this window a little bigger, where something like that, then you will notice that this is probably what it looks like on your screen. Remember, when you adjust the width of Revit, the ribbon changes the symbol so that everything can fit. So the component tool in Revit is pretty much any object, just about any object. So if I click on it, this is asking me to save. I'm not going to save right now. These are just a bunch of components. So for example, this is a water closet. If I click that there and place it, I have a water closet. There is a sink, there are pipes, there are openings. Let me just pick another. Let me pick the sink here, right? And components have different rules attached to them. So for example, I can't just stick a sink in this open area. I get this error message saying that we could not find an appropriate host. And that's because this type of component has to be placed on a face, or it has to be placed on a work plane. So notice when I hover over an element here, then I can place this component. So some components have different rules. Now in our case, we want to build up this wall using components. And if we look in our components list here, we don't have a component that's called, I don't know, stud timber, right? So in this case where you don't have a component, then you create one from scratch. Now to do that, when you go to the component tool, instead of clicking on the tool, you're going to click on this down arrow and you're going to go to model in place. And what this does, it turns Revit into a mode for modeling. So it changes the icons and everything, almost as if you had a program within a program. And it zooms into this new interface so that it gives you the tool to create this model, whatever it is. Now, in our case, what we want to create is a piece of lumber. That's it, just a piece of lumber. And then we can move it to create the wall plate, the sole plate, and the vertical studs. But we need to have literally a piece of lumber so that we can do that. So when we go to model in place, Revit is going to ask us, hey, okay, what kind of object are you planning to model? Is it casework, ceilings, columns? And you can pick one which will help you to keep your drawings organized, or you can choose generic model. So in our case, we are creating something that we can define. It's a piece, it's a structure of a wall. So we're going to categorize it under, let's categorize it under structural framing, because that's what we're doing. So we choose OK, and we're going to call this structural framing stud, right? Because remember, we're just modeling one stud, and then we're going to duplicate it in many places. So we're going to choose OK. All right, now take a look on the ribbon. Notice you don't have the architecture and the structure ribbon. Now you have these different tools. And this is because you are now in a special modeling mode of Revit. Now, Revit is still running, like your project environment is still running in the background. But in order to create this custom element, Revit has to kind of zoom in to this model, allow you to create it, and then you zoom back to your project, and then the model that you created, you can put it and rotate it and put it in different areas, right? So while we're in this model space now, and we're just going to make a simple extrusion. So I can click somewhere. I'm going to actually just click the box tool here. And if I start to draw, I'm going to make this, I'm just going to draw it first like that. And then I'm going to modify it. So I'm going to go to modify, click on this. So I want this to be a 4 inches and this to be 2 inches. So it's a 2x4 basically. And that's it. Now we went into extrude. So now we have to confirm the extrusion. Now this is the extrusion start, which is 0, and the extrusion end, but we can always edit this. So we could make it be 3 feet long, doesn't matter. And then we're going to tick the yes. So this is an element that we have modeled, right? So I want you to kind of imagine it this way.
Have anybody used model in place mode in Revit here before?
Yes, sir.
Anybody? Show.
Yes, sir.
Okay, some people. Let me ask, is this model in place mode new to anybody here?
Yes, sir.
Nobody? So everybody is familiar with model in place mode?
It's new
Yes,
to me.
it new to me too.
All right. Well, I'm hoping that you can get an idea of how model in place works. So let's see if we can get an understanding of this. So we're going to use it for the rest of here.
Now, when we click Finish Model, and we're back into the project mode now. So if you look at the top, you notice that the icons and stuff are different. And now we have a piece of lumber that we created. And if we click on it, we can see that we created this structural framing object. Now, I want you, before we continue, I just want us to kind of understand what is happening here, right? Because this can be a little confusing. Now, we have the project environment, and this is the environment that we use Revit in. This is where we create things like levels and objects and all of that stuff. Now, in this case, we want to create a piece of lumber, right? So in order to create this piece of lumber, we have to enter in what is called model in place mode. So imagine you have the program and you kind of zoom into this now new model in place mode. So you're inside of Revit, but now you're inside of a mode in Revit called model in place. And this is why your icons and stuff has changed. Now, when you're in this mode, you get new things you can do: extrude, sweep, revolve, you can do all sorts of stuff. Now, in order to create this piece of lumber, we need to use the extrude tool. So then we zoom into the extrude mode, which is inside of the model in place mode, which is inside of Revit. So if you understand, there are like 3 different levels, and you go down to this extrude mode. And what we did, we created this object and we extruded it. Then we checked yes. When we check yes, we came back out to the model in place mode. And then when we say, yes, this is the model that we want to create, we click yes again, and then we are back out to the project environment mode. So that is how modeling custom objects in Revit works, right? So here we can see that we're back in the project mode, and this is the object that we created. Okay, let's do an example. Suppose we wanted to, let's say, model a different object that's kind of sticking off of this object here. Let's say we wanted to create this element here. Now, in order to do that, we could create a next element, extrude it, then come back out and then attach it to this element, to this object here. But instead, what we're going to do, and I want us to see if we can keep track of how this works, right? So remember, we are in the project environment. We created this object using model in place. Now, if we want to modify or add to or subtract from that object, we need to now go into model in place mode within Revit. So in order to do that, we need to click this object here, and we can go edit in place. So now we have now gone into the model in place mode. And if you look, our icons have changed, right? So back to our analogy here, we were in the project environment, and now we have gone into the model in place environment. Within this environment, we have these new tools. So that is what you're seeing under create. You have these new tools, which you didn't have in the project environment. That's the key thing to understand. So it's almost like a program within a program. So when I'm back in this environment, I see this object that I created. Now I could, for example, edit this object by going to edit extrusion. And now I'm gone back down to the extrusion. And like, let's say I wanted to maybe create, I don't know, something else like this. And what I'm doing is just, I'm going to edit this. I'm going to use the slice tool and cut this here, and cut this here. And then I'm going to use the trim tool and join this like that, and join this and join this there. Then I'm going to say, so right now, in order for me to modify my extrusion, going back to my analogy, I had to go inside of extrude mode, which is inside of model in place mode. And all of that is inside of Revit, right? So I'm in this mode now, and I've now edited this shape. And when I click the yes, bam, I now have a new shape. And when I click yes, I'm now back to model in place mode. Now, I can model more things in this mode, for example. So let's say, for example, I wanted to create another extrusion. So I could choose extrude. Now, notice how this is now grayed out, because remember, this is a separate extrusion, and I'm creating a new extrusion, but within the model in place mode, right? So on this new extrusion, I'm going to go to set work plane. That's what this is. And your work plane is an area that you're working inside. It's like a flat area, and that is the surface on which you work. currently, if I go to show here, this is my work plane. It's a big flat area, as you can see there. And hence, when I draw something, I extrude from my work plane. So if I wanted to use this surface as my work plane, I would have to go to set, and then I would say maybe pick a new work plane, and then I can choose here. So now this is my new work plane. So hence, when I go to extrude, I can draw a shape like this, and I can say how much extrusion, and then I can click OK. So now I have two objects. I have an object here, and I have an object here. So back to my analogy here, what I actually did, I'm going to put this down here, put this here, right? Because I didn't use these tools, sweep and revolve. I used extrude. I created an object. Then I created another extrude object. So I have two extrude objects inside my mode. I could have created an object using the revolve tool, but the truth is I didn't. So I'm going to delete this here now. So in my model in place mode, I have two objects that I created using extrude. I went into this extrude here and modified it, came back out, then created a next extrude, went into it, created it, then came back out. So now in my model in place, I have two objects here. Now remember, I'm still inside of model in place. I haven't come back out to my project environment as yet. I'm still in this special mode. It's kind of like a little sandbox that I'm messing around and creating stuff in, but I can't use it in my project until I come out of the sandbox, right? So to do that, I need to click this yes here. Now I'm back in the project mode. And now if I click on this, notice that this is just one object, right? So back to my analogy, I've gone back into my project environment. This is where I have my levels and all of the stuff that I used to create a BIM model. And I have this model in place element that is here. And this model in place element, everything inside here is now a single object. The entire model in place is now a single object inside of my project environment. I can move it, I can scale it, I can rotate it. Doesn't matter, because this mode that I went into, I created objects, and then I'm back into the project mode, and I can even duplicate it. Like I can do any amount of things with it after I come out of this mode. So for example, this object that I have here, I could copy it any amount of times because all of this is linked to the same model in place mode. So for example, I could now go to edit this again. So essentially what I've done, I've gone into this model in place mode. Then let's say I want to change this extrusion. So I now need to go into this extrusion. Here it is. And now I can change it. So let's say I wanted to add a curve. Right. So this is now what I want to model. Let's say I want to change it to, and I'm just drawing kind of a random shape here. And then I'm going to use my trim tool, extend that. Let's delete that. And then I choose OK. So now I have gone into this element and I've changed it. Now, of course, I'm going to click finish to come back to my project environment. And now you can see that I went into this model in place, edited it. And of course, I can just duplicate this again. And I can use this anywhere I want. So that is how modeling in Revit kind of works. All right, so back to.
Right, so this model in place mode, we're going to use it a little further down in our project. But for today's exercise, we're going to use it to create this wall. So we do have to use it for today. Anybody have any questions on model in place? Anything that they didn't understand? Anybody? Guys, are you there?
Yes,
Yes,
sir,
sir.
right here.
Yeah.
Understood.
Oh, all right. Talk again. Let me see if I can hear you. Anybody?
I said, yes, sir, right here.
Oh, okay,
Understood.
good. Yeah. I think my headphones, it goes to sleep after a while.
Our mission at hand, we are creating this wall and we're trying to use the highest, we're trying to use this fidelity, this level of detail where we're creating all the, actually this one, where we're creating all of the different elements here to create this wall. All right, so let's minimize this here. Let's put this over here. All right, so of course I'm going to delete all of these. I'm going to go into this modeling place here and I'm going to delete that. I'm going to go into this modeling place here and I'm going to put it back as how it was. All right, I'm going to say okay, then I'm going to say okay again. So remember, all I needed was this piece of timber. And now I'm going to use this piece of timber to duplicate it to create the rest of these elements here. So I choose OK here, and now I have this single piece of timber here. Now I could go to my elevation view, so I could make it the height of one level here. You know, let's imagine that this is one level. Then I could use this view to copy them. So I'm going to go to CO, copy, and I'm just going to maybe put them 3.5. Right, there we go. All right, so back to the 3D view now. Now, as we can see here, I do have my timber that is here. All right, now what I need to do is I need to now build a base here and here. So I would need to now go back to modeling place. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to say structural framing, and I'm going to say structural framing wall and wall plus sole plate, right? Because we can use the same thing for the wall and the sole. All right, now everything is gone to gray, and now I'm in the edit in place mode. And in this mode, I want to extrude going this way. So what that means is that I need to change my work plane. So currently my work plane is flat. So when I extrude, I'm going to go up, but now I want to go this way. So I'm going to say, okay, set my work plane. I'm going to put this little down arrow and say pick a plane. I'm going to pick this plane now. So now this is my work plane, right? There it is. All right. So now that my work plane is here, I could go ahead and go to create and go to extrude, because I'm going to use extrude. And I could go ahead and draw a box. In this case, I'm going to draw it like this. I'm going to just draw it first, and then I'm going to just adjust it. So I'm going to use the align tool, and I'm just going to snap that there. And then I know that I want this to be 2 inches. All right. And my height is, I will set my height afterwards. So it's going this way, but that's okay. So I want to go basically this way. All right. Then I also want this to be below. So I could use my move tool and move it down to there. All right, so with that done, I'm going to say okay to come out of this mode. So now I've created this element here, and I've created this element here. So of course I can duplicate this element. So I'm going to go to copy, and I'm going to copy it up here. Okay, let me move it. Of course I can do this in my elevation view, and I'll just paste it there. All right, now in terms of the covering for the walls, so this is our basic frame that we have here. All right, that is our basic frame. Now in terms of getting the surfaces on the frame, which would be these surfaces here, we could now go back into, so we want to go into here and we go to modeling place, and this time
Sir,
we'll just choose wall, and you go.
sir,
Yeah.
it's going a bit, I don't know for me, but it's
Oh,
going
it's
a bit.
going too fast. Yes, I know. I'm actually making it go a little fast because of how we want to fit stuff in. So no problem. I'll slow it down.
One more thing is that when he selects, when the old video, when I said he like disaster, it's a gaffer.
Yes, there's a AI me.
When the in place modeling is selected, it brings up some options, and that's not exactly options I get on my Revit when I select in place modeling.
Oh, so for example, when we go to modeling place, so these options may differ depending on the version of Revit you have, but are you saying that you're not seeing structural support? You're not seeing structural framing as an option?
Not really.
But you're seeing these other ones there, like um Is it? I wonder if it's because of the filter list. Maybe you have only a few of these selected.
But let me check something, sir. I might be in the wrong, what you call it again, though? The wrong, something there.
Mode.
Yes, sir.
Right. Make sure you're in the project environment.
It's Monday, September 30th.
All right.
Ah, yes, sir, found it.
All right. Good. 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 Okay. So, all right. Good. So we can move on. So yes, we will slow it down. All right.
Down to this extrude mode. And what we did, we created this object and we extruded it. Then we checked yes. When we check yes, we came back out to the model in place mode. And then when we say, yes, this is the model that we want to create, we click yes again, and then we are back out to the project environment mode. So that is how modeling custom objects in Revit works, right? So here we can see that we're back in the project mode, and this is the object that we created. Okay, let's do an example. Suppose we wanted to, let's say, model a different object that's kind of sticking off of this object here. Let's say we wanted to create this element here. Now, in order to do that, we could create a next element, extrude it, then come back out and then attach it to this element, to this object here. But instead, what we're going to do, and I want us to see if we can keep track of how this works, right? So remember, we are in the project environment. We created this object using model in place. Now, if we want to modify or add to or subtract from that object, we need to now go into model in place mode within Revit. So in order to do that, we need to click this object here and we can go edit in place. So now we have now gone into the model in place mode, and if you look, our icons have changed.
I think did I accidentally click that thing? I think I did. I think I accidentally clicked it and gone back further. Right. So we were at the point where we were creating the sole plate and the wall plate.
So now that my work plane is here, I could go ahead and go to create and go to extrude because I'm going to use extrude. And I could go ahead and draw a box. In this case, I'm going to draw it like this. I'm going to just draw it first, and then I'm going to just adjust it. So I'm going to use the align tool, and I'm just going to snap that there. And then I know that I want this to be 2 inches. All right. And my height is, I will set my height afterwards. So it's going this way, but that's okay. So I want to go basically this way. All right. Then I also want this to be below. So I could use my move tool and move it down to there. All right. So with that done, I'm going to say okay to come out of this mode. So now I've created this element here and I've created this element here. So of course I can duplicate this element. So I'm going to go to copy and I'm going to copy it up here. Okay, let me move it. Of course I can do this in my elevation view and I'll just paste it there. All right, now in terms of the covering for the walls, so this is our basic frame that we have here. All right, that is our basic frame. Now, in terms of getting the surfaces on the frame, which would be these surfaces here, we could now go back into, so we want to go into here and we go to model in place. And this time we'll just choose wall because we're going to create a wall and we're going to call this wall cladding and we're going to use the extrude. Oh, we need to change our plane. So let me change the work plane. So I'm going to go to set work plane and set it to level 1. Actually, the work plane is here already. So I'm just going to get my tool here and I'm just going to draw it and then I'm going to change it. So I'm going to make this 1 inch and choose OK and choose OK again. So this is the cladding, and I can, of course, can make this taller. All right, now we're not going to go any further because this is pretty much creating this wall using the model in place tools. Now, if in order to cut like a hole in this shape here, we would have to do that inside of the model in place tool. So actually, okay, let me show you an example. So let's say that I wanted to create a opening in this side. I would go to model in place and I'm going to say walls again. All right, I'm going to say cladding. And this time around, I'm going to change. I'm going to go pick plane and I'm going to pick this side here. So this will be my work plane, as you can see here. And this time what I want to do is I'm going to do an extrusion. I'm going to draw it this way. Then I'm going to draw a opening like this. And then I'm going to just make a cut here. I'll trim this and trim that. Okay. Obviously this is a little thick, so what I'm going to do is say this is 1 inch. I choose okay. So that's how I have my opening. So let me delete this one, and I would then, so in order to get the wall on this side, I would just go to my plan view and I would just make a copy. And this is a good thing to do. You need to turn off constrain, so that way you can copy it anywhere. So I can put it there and then I can move it. I can move it there. So that's how we have our opening. So let me go back to 3D view and there is our opening. And that's basically our wall. Now, to model things like this, obviously it takes a lot of time in order to get everything to be exact. So for example, now we could go into modeling our wall plates and all of this stuff, and that would take a bit more time. Now, there are some cases where you may need to model things with this amount of detail, then you would use the model in place to do things like that. Now, the next level down is going to be using some parametric tools that are already built into Revit, right? So we're going to do the same thing again, but using these tools.
All right. So now I know some of you, I know we're going a little fast because we need to cover this topic of level of detail, right? However, I do think we have about another hour left. So we're going to do 3 methods, as I said. We're going to do the highest fidelity one, which is what we just did. That is like where you model everything, right? If you need a wall plate, you model it. If you need a screw, you model it. And the way how you do that in Revit is by using model in place. So we're going to move on to the next method now. Now, even if you're following along, right, and you haven't created that wall as yet, I want you to just pause and move to the next method, right? In the same workspace, because I want you guys to see if you can follow along with each method, because this is in-class activity. It's not as if this is a homework that you're going to do afterwards. I don't want anybody to be working on this afterwards because I want us to use the time to focus on our model. All right, because I'm already concerned about the amount of submissions. So we're only using the time to in class to do this. So we're going to go to the next method of modeling. This is what, as I said, this was the highest level of detail. We're going to now come down one step further and create the same wall. Yes, Mohammed.
So if you know your own method of doing it, you can follow that.
Well, I'm going to answer that question a little later. For now, I just want us to absorb these 3 methods.
Okay.
All right. So, all right, let's continue.
Now, we're going to now use the wall tool.
Say again?
The video is kind of too speedy to follow along.
I know. It's actually me speeding it up because I'm trying to, because I want us to actually work on it. So, rather than everybody trying to go along with the video, we're just going to kind of follow it and then we'll work on it after. All right. So don't worry that it's speedy. If it go and leave you, Just pause where you were in the first wall and just go to now the second level of detail. All right. I remember all of this class is recorded, so we can always come back to it. But this that we're doing is something that we need to finish in class. All right.
So obviously this element here is a wall. So we're going to now try to construct this again using the wall tool. Now, when we go to the wall tool, we're going to go to the little down arrow. No, we're going to click on the wall tool. Now, just like with any family element in Revit, we can click this little down arrow here and we get all the different types of element. But I want to highlight something. The wall tool is divided into 3 categories. You have basic wall, and then you have a bunch of variations of that. You have curtain wall, and you have a few variations, and then you have stacked wall, right? And this is a wall that changes in height as it goes up. Now, we're going to create this using a curtain wall option. Now, there are 3 options here we can choose from: not defined, glazing, or storefront. So we're going to choose not defined, and this might be different in different versions of Revit. So we're going to choose this one, and we're just going to draw a wall. I'm going to hold shift so it's at 90 degrees. Now, when I draw this wall, obviously it just looks flat. And if I click on it here, it says that I have a curtain wall. Now, the thing is, the curtain wall has some special features that you can take advantage of to create this type of wall. And it would be as, let's say, precise as modeling every single element like what we did before. But at the same time, it's good enough to show the major elements, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to click this curtain wall here. First, let's deal with the height. So we could go to the elevation view. That's this wall. And then we could set the height. Now, because we are using a parametric object in Revit, we can now use things like constraint, because this is technically a wall. It is a type of wall. So we can use the constraint height, and we can constrain it to level 2. So that way this wall always stays at level 2. Let's go back to 3D view. Now, obviously this wall is very thin, and if you click on it, notice that you don't really see the options to make the wall thicker. We have to go to edit type. Now, the first thing we're going to do is that we're going to duplicate this. So we're going to hit duplicate, and then we're going to call this stud wall, and we're going to choose OK. Now, all of these are different parameters of this curtain wall. And what we're going to change is we are going to change the panel. Now, the panel, if you think about the concept of how a curtain wall works, you have frames and then you have infills or panels between those frames. So in our case, the panel here says none. So we're going to click that drop down list, and we're going to pick, for now, we're just going to pick a generic 4-inch panel. And we're going to choose OK. So now the wall is now 4 inches, right? Which is essentially the thickness of our stud member, right? Now, the great thing about a curtain wall is that you can use curtain wall features that would not work with a regular wall, but only with the curtain wall. So in order to create these studs here, we can actually go to architecture. And if we go on to the right, we see curtain system, curtain grid, and mullion. All these options work only with curtain walls, right? So we're going to use the curtain grid to define where we want those studs to be. So we're going to choose curtain grid. And how this works, if you kind of hover on the edge, you see a grid there. So I'm going to put one, I'm going to make it the same, 3.5, 3.5 again, 3.5. There we go. All right. Then these are just really a grid. And on the grid is where you put the mullion, right? So if I go back to architecture, you see where you have the mullion. You can then apply the mullion to the grid. Now, when you choose mullion, and go back here, when you choose mullion, This is the mullion that's going to be applied. It's going to be a 2.5 inch by 5 inch. And if you click the drop down here, there are some other types that you have here. And we can actually create our own mullion, but we're just going to use this built-in one. So we can actually just apply mullions there, and we can apply it to the top as well, and the sides, the bottom. Right, so we basically have our system. Now, if we want a mullion running across, right, we would have to go back to grid, and we'll have to insert another grid. So maybe put one here, and then we go back to architecture, mullion, and then we put another mullion there. As simple as that. So right away, this is already way faster, but you have to work with the system that is set up. Whereas the original method, you create, it's like you have full freedom to create any object, extrude any object, and place it wherever you want. With this one now, you have to go according to the rules. You have to create these grids, and then you have to apply a mullion. If you need a different type of mullion, you have to create a new type and then apply it to the grid. So it basically has more rules for you to follow, but then it's easier to do. Now there's a couple of things we have to do. Firstly, we don't have infills in this type of wall. So what we have to do is we're going to click the wall, go back to edit type for this stud wall we created, and we're going to say where it says panel. Remember, we chose the basic wall generic. So now we're going to choose empty, and we choose OK, and now it is completely empty, and all we have is the studs. So we are kind of back to where we were here. Also, now we want to create, we need to fix this, because in terms of construction, you would have one member at the top and one member at the bottom. They wouldn't construct this like this, but of course this is using how they would construct perhaps a curtain wall. So we need to change this. Now, of course, in this method, we could have just selected the piece of timber and move it. But here, each of this works in a system. So you have to play by the rules of the system. So we're going to go back to edit type, and we're going to, under join condition, we're going to change that to border and horizontal grid continuous. Choose OK. Now, that makes the horizontal grids always continuous, which I think is more accurate to what would be done. Now, again, if we wanted to be super specific and we said we want to have only 2 members here, 1 member here, 1 member here, we want to have an angle plate here, using this system doesn't give you those details. We would have to use the system where everything is customizable, but of course it would take longer. Now, we do need to get the doors, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to the wall, and this time we're going to choose, because we're not going to model the wall, we're going to actually pick a wall that's going to be 1 inch thick, which is just the thickness of the ply. We don't have a wall that's 1 inch thick, so what we're going to do is we're going to just pick the closest one, which is generic 4-inch wall. We're going to go to edit type, and then we're going to duplicate it and say, we're going to call it cladding 1 inch. And then we're going to go into the structure, and we're going to change the structure to 1 inch. And we're going to change the material to be maybe like wood, and choose OK, and choose OK. And now we can draw this wall. Now we could do it in 3D view like this if we really wanted to, or we could do it in plan view. So I'm going to say, let this be finished face interior, and I'm going to start from here. Let me start from here. Now, because this is a wall, I can do the same thing. I can click this and say, I want you to go up to level 2. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Basic wall cladding 1 inch and up to level 2. All right, so we've already kind of reached back at where we were. Now we need to put some cutouts in the wall. Now, the great thing about this is that this is using the wall tool, which works with the window and the door tool. So we could actually just go to door and put a door right in the wall like that. Now it's telling us an error because obviously it's not going to cut through the other side of the door here, of the wall here. And this is what the the door looks like. If we can kind of click it there. Now, in order to cut the other side of this, we can just use a tool called a join tool. So we just go to modify, use the join tool. And what the join tool does, it connects two elements together and let them act as one. So for example, if I join this wall to this wall, then they act as one wall. And notice that both sides are now cut. Because even though they're separate walls, because you can see I can click on them. So right now I have this wall here, and then this wall here, and then the stud in the middle. But they're still connected as one wall, which is great for our purpose. Now, the other thing, of course, is that we need to cut out how we're seeing the structural members behind the door. So to do that, we're going to click on the stud wall here, and we're going to use a nifty tool. We're going to go to edit profile. And what this allows us to do is we can actually edit the shape of the wall. So for example, let's say I want to curve this. Let's say I want to curve the profile of this like that. And then I want to trim this like that and trim this like that. Choose OK. And it's going to be a little weird though, but it's essentially trimming the wall to match the profile. So you can edit the profile of pretty much any wall in Revit and it will match what you sketch it. So let me undo. So my thing is that I want to edit the profile, and of course I'm going to cut a hole. I'm going to just draw this way bigger like that. And then I'm going to just use the align tool and align this. I think I can use the align tool. All right, so align that to here. See if I can get to this upside down. There we go. Then align that to there and align that to there. Then I also have to deal with the base, because the base, so I'm going to delete this here, and then I'm going to split this here, and then I'm going to trim this here and trim that there. So now the profile is doing that. So I'm going to choose OK. And it's going to say it's going to have to delete some elements. And now we have our wall. Right. So that is pretty much. And the neat thing is that we have the door inside the wall. Now let me turn up. Let me put it to fine detail. There we go. So we can see the little door handle there. And if I click on this here, you can see that we do still have the structure going behind the door. And the great thing is that Revit will actually trim the structure here. Now I can still go and I can use tab and select the grids, and I can still move the grids and it will adjust to the wall. Let me hide this so that I can show you. So let me right click and go to hide. Right. So notice it's adjusting to the wall, and I can even add more. So if I go back to architecture and go to grid, I can add another grid here, and then I can add a mullion here. And you see, it's just going to trim it onto the wall. So it's going to treat it very similar to how it's treated in actual construction. But as I said again, if you want to go into really high detail to say, okay, but we want 2 pieces of lumber to be here, 2 pieces here, you would probably be better off using the manual method of modeling. Let me hide this one. So this one was very manual, took much longer. This one was using the curtain wall tool and the tools within Revit. Now we're going to do a third wall now, and this is going to be the fastest method, right? So if we can track back to where we were, we pretty much use the highest detail level to create this wall. And then we kind of use this one where we represented the major elements. So the major elements in the walls are the studs. Now we're going to try this, or a combination of these here, which is, we don't need to have all these details. We just need to have a wall. Now to do that, we're going to go to wall, and then we're just going to use a basic wall. So let's say the thickness of this wall is about 6 inches. So we're going to choose a generic 6-inch wall, and then we're just going to draw that wall. We're going to do the same thing and make the height up to level 2, and there we have a wall. Now obviously this wall does not have all the details here, but Revit, if you were doing a floor plan, that has many walls that are stud walls, you definitely would not use this method because it would take forever to create the walls in 3D. This other method is a bit quicker, but is not as efficient if the point is to do a floor plan with just showing the walls. For you to be going in and adjusting all of these elements would be too much. Now, this just a plain wall is great, but there's no, if we look on the floor plan here, like we can clearly see that these are stud walls, even this one that we added in. But this is just a plain old wall. Like, now this method is using symbols, right? So we're using a 2D symbol to tell us what kind of wall it is, rather than using an actual model. Now, to use symbols, we're going to click on the wall, we're going to go to edit type, and then we're going to edit the structure. Now, in the structure, we're going to say that, okay, the stud is going to be maybe 4 inches. Then we're going to have a cladding. So we're going to insert another structure. It's not going to be a structure, it's going to be a finish. And we're going to put this on the outside of the core, because the core is going to be the stud wall. And we're going to make that be 1 inch. And then we're going to insert another here, and we're going to move this down to the inner cladding. And we're going to change it from structure to finish 2, or it can be finish 1. And then we're going to make this 1 inch. Now let's talk about the materials. Now, the material could be for the wood. Now let me go back to materials to show you something. Now, when I choose material, this is the color that it will be represented on your drawing. When you cut a section through the wood, it's going to look like this. When you look at the plan, it's going to look like this, which is nothing. It's just going to be white. So we want to change the pattern of how it looks in plan, and we want to choose maybe something like, I don't know, something like this, maybe like this. This looks like wood, but it's not necessarily wood. We want to show the studs. So we would choose maybe something like, let's see, we could choose something like this, but we would need to modify it because what we're using now are symbols, right? So for the meantime, we could probably try something like this and choose OK and choose OK. And you can see where it's not exactly studs, but it does represent the wall. So if you compare these 3 types of walls, you can see that in a plan view, they look very similar. In a plan view, they look very similar. But in a 3D view, you can see where this just looks like a plain wall, actually, right? So these are the 3 different ways in which you can use to consider when you're building any object in a BIM program, right? So what we did was to model it from scratch, and this is how you get the highest level detail. Then we use some of the elements from Revit to get an acceptable level of detail that shows the major elements, or we could just use a combination of model and symbols to represent the object that we are creating in the BIM program. Okay, so all right, guys. So what I want you guys to do for me now is, oops, let's go back. We're gonna go over to right. These 3 walls, back, is what I want you guys to model for me. And that is what you're actually going to submit. I'm going to stick it on the board here. Oh, okay. All right. There we go. All right.
I want to save this image here. Okay. All right. Now, what I've done is, if you have the website up, this is what it looks like. I made some adjustments to it. So if you hit refresh, you're going to see this section come up here. All right. So these, I'm just kind of laying out the class activities. The first class activity was your schematic design sketch, right? That's the sketch that you were to submit that we did in class. The second class activity was actually, it wasn't the foundation model, actually. It was the site terrain model. Let me refresh that. Right. So it, okay, refresh. Site terrain model, right. And these two class activities were actually a part of your project. You just get some extra points out of it if you submit it this part during class. This one is a little different. This is a specific class activity, right? So when you create these three walls, it's this, right? When you create these three walls for me, you're going to save this Revit. You're going to take a screenshot like this. And then, oh, by the way, guys, I forgot to put in a door in this wall here. So when you do these three walls, I want you to just put a door in this one. All right, guys, you hearing me? Everybody got it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, this is important. Come on, headphones. Right. So this is important. What we're going to use in our project is going to be this wall type. Right? And actually, when I was in CSC, this is how we used to model anything in 3D. We used to build it manually, you know, extrude, subtract, and that is how we actually used to build it. But if you remember the model that I showed you guys here, right? So this is my model here. And you can see where, as I said, the control that you have over these members is not as controlled as if you were actually modeling them individually. But trust me, it saves you a whole lot of time. And the purpose that we're going to be using this for, we don't need to have that level of accuracy of what is happening inside the wall, right? Now, if you look at the mirror board here, if you look at, for example, if you were doing a drawing and you had a pullout, you had like a section where you want to show what this area of the wall looks like in detail, but in 3D, you would actually have to model it, because this is because you are actually showing the exactly where the members are, how it's put together. But usually when we pull out this detail, we only do a little section. We don't do the entire building as fully detailed as this, right? So in order for us to complete the project, you need to know how to model using these levels of detail, right? You need to know how to model something where you can model everything, and you need to know how to use the tools to just get a representation of what you want, and how to use 2D symbols, because not everything has to be 3D. All right, guys. So do you have any questions on this activity?
So do you have to use different methods, or can we just use one method?
For this activity, remember you're only giving me 3 wall samples, so you're using 3 different methods. For our actual project, you're going to be using the second method, the middle one, right? So, and what I will actually do for you guys is I will do you a big favor and post my experience of creating this model. So for
Okay,
example,
so
I'm going to mute that, and I'm going to go fast. Right. So for me, when I was creating the walls, we used, what I did first was to outline where the walls are, because as you know, when we were modeling this, you probably didn't have all of the design fleshed out. We only did a section view and a plan view. But there are a lot of other questions, like, for example, what happens on the other side of the elevation, right? So the idea is that we will finish the design while we're actually modeling, but we have the schematic to get us started. So we already know for me that in this, and this doesn't go for everybody, because this actually is my is what I chose to do here. But I want to put the walls here, and this is how I'm kind of just sketching out my plan of action, right? And where I want my doors to be, and where I want my windows to be. Now, you don't need to submit this sketch to me. This is up to you to figure out the rest of your building, because the only thing you're required to submit to me is just the plan and section, which you have already done. So now, in terms of creating these walls, we're going to use the method where we use the curtain wall, right? This is the middle method. So we're not doing the most extreme detail, but we're not going to the other side of the scale where we're just using symbols and hatches to represent the wall, right? A part of what I also did was to use guidelines, because if your design is a little bit more, let's say let's say that you haven't fully fleshed out where all the walls are going to be. Well, before you start to draw the complicated wall, you can actually just use a line tool. In this case, I'm using the model line tool, and I'm just kind of using it to determine where on the model my walls are going to fall. So I put this line here so that I can, just kind of decide, okay, if I put the wall here, do I have enough space to walk around? That kind of stuff. So these are like guidelines, or like construction lines, like when you used to do 2D drawings and you just draw a faint line to kind of guide you. So you can use that to help you along. Now, in terms of drawing the wall, I did use a curtain wall. This time I didn't create the curtain wall from scratch. I just used the storefront curtain wall, and just modified it. So it's actually even quicker than what we did for the class activity today, because the curtain wall, the storefront curtain wall already has the members laid out, and you just tell it what spacing you want it to be and what elements you want it to use. All right. So what we do is go ahead and frame out the walls. And usually what I do is I in my case, I frame out the structure of the walls first using the curtain wall system. I align them to the grid that I had before that we did in the previous checkpoint. And then I use the profile tool to cut the windows and doors, just like what we did in this example here, right? So remember that when we did the elevation, we only knew probably on one side where the windows and doors were. So you have to now decide, okay, what happens on the front elevation and what happens on the rear elevation, right? So that is what you guys are gonna determine, right? And by the way, when you start to do this, you're gonna get other ideas. So I knew that I wanted to put a um what do you call this, an angled window on one side, but that's about it. I didn't know what I was going to do with the front elevation or the other elevation that I didn't draw. So I just put two windows there and then put a large window at the front where you enter the building, right? So pretty much that is what you have when you frame out everything. Now, after you frame it out, in my case, I had to put a column here because, your building needs to be structurally reasonable, guys. So don't give me any kind of impossible cantilever or floating balconies or anything like that. You have to give me stuff that is structurally, at least visually structurally accurate. All right, so then I started to put on the coverings on the wall, right? So exactly what we did in that little sample video. Now, after the coverings, I started to insert the windows. Now, we're using built-in windows in Revit, and then we're just adjusting the size of these windows. So we're not modeling these windows in the highest fidelity, meaning we're not modeling every frame of the window and extruding it. We're just going to use the window tool. And in this case, I place them on the outside cladding. And because the outside claddings are walls, they're able to be placed in there. Then I use the floor plan to align them in the center of the spaces. Now, once you line them out, once you put in all your windows and doors, then you can put in the internal walls, and using that feature where you attach the walls together. So when you cut the outside, the inside of the walls also are cut as well, right? And yeah, and that is pretty much what I did. For my curtain wall, I had to make sure that that the frames fell inside of the thickness of the walls, so to speak, right? Because in order to, there is no corner window that you can insert into a wall. So what we did, we used another curtain wall to act as a window. So the curtain wall is very flexible in Revit, and pretty much whenever you create a lot of kind of interesting walls that you can create, you can use with the curtain wall. So this is what you should have at the end of the day, right? You should have your walls and your foundation and your site. All right. Now, as I said, the checkpoint 3 requires that you have all your walls and your roof, and then everything should be both for your first and second floor. So obviously I don't have the second floor here or the first floor because that's how we do ground floor. Then let's just call it upper floor. So we don't have the upper floor yet. We're going to tackle that in the other classes. We have about 3 rounds of classes during checkpoint 3. All right, guys, any questions?
Sir, are you going to show us or like make the video that it was showing before available because I wasn't able to follow along?
Oh, yeah. This class is available as a video. So you will
So,
have, so what I did in the video was show you how to create three different wall samples: a high detail, medium detail, and low detail. And we're going to use the medium detail for our project. So the sample that you're building and submitting to me now in class, you're going to submit all three samples, which
Yes, sir. I think she means the samples. Is there a way that we can see that in that video for the samples?
yeah. Oh, you mean while in class? No, class is pretty much done. So
Yes,
what I
sir.
want,
As I said, I couldn't follow because I didn't have the program was acting up on me.
no, that's okay. What I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to just save this video, give it to you guys, and you have the rest of the day to submit these samples to me, these three samples. These just one Revit file, though. Don't give me three files. One Revit files with just these three wall samples. One that's a symbol. So, for example, for the one that's a symbol, when you go to the see. What's happening? What's happening? Right. Right. For the one that's a symbol, when you go to the top view, this is what it should look like. You should see a representation of the studs and then the two walls on either side. So when you look on all three of them in plan, they should all look like a stud wall. However, when you go in 3D, you will see three varying levels of detail, which is kind of indicative of what we're seeing here, where we're seeing a high, a medium, and a symbol detail. All right. Now, also, you're going to submit a screenshot. Let me go back to the website. So when you click on this link here for class activity 3, class activity 3, LOD in Revit, level of detail in Revit, you're going to submit a screen capture. So just take a screenshot of that looks just like this. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put that on the form. Okay, it's taking a while to load. Anyway, but you're going to submit this for me here. Here we go. Yeah. Trying to make life very straightforward for you guys. I'm going to refresh this. Refresh. Oh, I have to close this. Okay. What's this? Put back on the link. And okay, I did put a picture here, but I guess it takes a little while to show. But anyway, so you're going to submit a screenshot to me and the actual Revit file, which is just an empty file with three walls in there. Just make it up. Then you guys are going to go ahead and create your walls using what you learned in class. Now, for next class, so checkpoint 3, right? So this is what we did this class. For next class, we're going to work on roof and slabs, right? So we're going to deal with the upper floor and we're going to deal with the roof. And in order for you to do that, you need to have your walls from the ground floor, all right? So everything is building on top of each other, guys. So I need you guys to catch up and be on the same level as we are dealing with in class. There may be a class activity next week, or there may not be. Who knows? Just show up to class and we'll find out. All right, guys. Any other questions before we go? Go again, Anderson. You kind of.
Same. Can I speak to your friend, please?
Oh man, you kind of chipping out. Repeat it again. I'm sorry. But talk slower. Or you can type it in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, type it in the chat. Right. All right, guys. Any other questions? Okay, some person's asking for the classroom link. Oh, yes. If you're having any trouble with Google and submitting, Google tends to do that sometimes. All you have to do is submit using a different Google email. So for example, if I go to the website, I click submit work and I click upload, and for some reason the upload is failing, just use a different Gmail address. Just make up one or use another one that you might have and submit it under that email address, and chances are it will work. All right, cool. So yeah, sure. You want to share your screen, Anderson, and oh, you tried that and it still didn't work, Nicole. Are you sure the file size isn't exceeding the, I don't know.
No, sir, we're close. Sir, I think it's the drive because I can't upload anything in my portfolio for studio as well, and I've been communicating this. I will try.
Even if you okay, do it from a incognito. Try and do it from so sign into Google, into a different Google in incognito, and try to submit it using that incognito window and see if that works.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
All right. Yes, Anderson, you want to share your screen to show me the problems that you're having? And let me see if I can help. Or you want to just ask me directly? Okay, cool. All right. So, hold on. You remember you're muted. Or am I muted? Muted. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So, this is because I restarted this podcast because this uh, and you have like left water it was changed like I have wrong over here because this is like it didn't change, so this is going to the project I was so I don't know.
Okay. I only pick up 30% of what you said. I don't know. It's like the mic going in and out, up and down, kind of a thing. Is it too long for you to type out a short version of what you want to solve in the chat?
No, sir, at the time too.
You said you can't, or too long? Oh, you're typing. Okay, cool. I don't know. Something is funny with the mic. But it's good that you bring this up because other persons might be having a similar problem. And this is why I tell you to ask the questions in class because you can't ask the video questions. I mean, you can leave a comment, I guess, because if you're watching it on YouTube, but I'm just like, I don't think I'm that, I haven't reached that level of social communication yet. To respond to comments in YouTube. All right. So all right. Oh, when you said the name that is supposed to change, you're talking about the name of the the name of the level compared to the name of the floor plan. That's what you mean. Okay. Okay, yeah, but it's okay. I think in the new version, in the old version of Revit, when you change the level here, the name of the floor plan used to change. And that used to annoy me like crazy because you might want your floor plan to be titled something like entry level ground floor, but then you want in your drawings, maybe you don't want to have that long text entry level ground floor. Maybe you want to have like ELGF, because you don't want to crowd up your drawings. So what I realized is in the later versions of Revit now, even though the floors are linked, the names don't change. So my names in 2024, when I name it in the drawing, it didn't update the plan. But if it is blue, you notice that this is blue here. This means that it is linked to a level. And if it is black, that means it is just a level by itself. It's not linked to a plan. So yeah, so don't worry about the name change. The important thing is to name your floor something reasonable for the drawing and name your floor something reasonable for the plans. All right. All right. All right, cool. And don't be afraid to put as many levels as you want. Like, just don't put the blue ones where on the left-hand side, you will have like 1 million floor levels. Use the black ones where you can have a floor level for everything. Okay. All right. So that is class today, guys. Please submit your class activity. Remember, you have until the end of the day. I will make this video available ASAP so that you guys can go back through the video. I want you to create the walls for your building. I did it already, but I'm not going to upload my video just yet because I want you guys to use the lessons that we learned today to create your walls. We have 3 weeks to create checkpoint 3. So if you're having any issues with the walls, we can deal with it in class next week. I will eventually post my experience of building this model online eventually, but not immediately yet because you already have today's class as a sample. I want you to use that. Please don't go off into the wild and do your own method of creating the walls. You have to use the okay, good, Nicole. Work that balance, do that balance, that work-life balance, or work-life balance. Please use the methods that we use here in class because we chose it specifically so that it can support what you're doing in your design studio housing project. All right, that's our aim. Okay, so I will see you next week. Remember the other groups that have their presentation. I think it was group 4, no, group 5 and 6. So 5 and 6, your presentation is on Saturday. Let's keep it going. Take care, guys. Enjoy the rest of the week.
Okay. You too.
All right, cool.